Nebraska loses on a Friday night to Illinois, and what happened to their perceived strengths? Has everything changed? We'll discuss it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Good morning, everybody. The day after, we appreciate you guys for being with us today. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mitch, about last night.
Yes, Connor. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. To go through the introductions, Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. We are here to react. Nebraska loses 31-24 in overtime. You've heard this story before. Not on a Friday night, but we've heard it on Saturdays. Huskers got nothing going in the OT period. We'll get to that. It was a disaster at the end. We're going to dive right in. And the first place that we want to go is to this defense, which was supposed to be the strength for Nebraska. And we'll say that the defense did create a couple of turnovers, stripped the ball twice from Illinois, and that's the end of it. That's the end of the good things that Nebraska's defense did on Friday night at Memorial Stadium as the fans and everyone else attempted to celebrate this 400th sellout. It was supposed to be a night of happiness and history, and all it turned out to be was drudging up ugly memories of the way things have gone for the last 8 years.
You know, Mitch, we kind of brushed off last week Nebraska's, ability against Northern Iowa to get off the field and the Panthers kind of extending drives and stuff like that. But man, I feel like a dummy about that now. Nebraska's defense on Friday night against Illinois, it was getting what it wanted. It was extending drives. It was chunking them. And we could go back to this idea that Nebraska maybe was going to be a don't break defense, right? But I think after the first couple games and really how last year ended for Nebraska, it was, becoming this defense that you expected to pin their ears back a little bit, to get downhill, to be aggressive and to be explosive. So I don't know. I think right now for me, it's a reevaluation of just about everything. We could spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about that, but it's first and foremost on that defensive front and that defensive line. I think they're good, but I just think we have to probably move the bar a little bit. They get the ball moved on them by teams who are experienced and a little bit creative in running the football. And in Illinois, people have seen the book now on Nebraska. Northern Iowa and Illinois have kind of put it out there, and there's no shortage of teams who want to play like that going forward.
Brett Bielema said after the game, the Illinois coach, that they thought they could create an advantage against the Nebraska defensive front if it got into the second half, that they could wear Nebraska down and be more physical than Nebraska. And that's a jarring thing to hear with this defensive line full of veterans and seniors in depth after the offseason that was so focused that Nebraska had, that you could see that. Illinois could see that as a path to winning this game. And that's exactly what happened. Nebraska offensively and defensively was running out of gas in the second half. And we're going to continue to talk about the defense here before we get to the offense, but it was shocking, Connor. Like, they couldn't get off the field. No. When it was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, you had the feeling that as long as Illinois didn't make a mistake and commit a turnover, which it did twice, those weren't third down plays, but as long as Illinois didn't create a bad situation with a penalty or a drop pass, that they were going to get it done, that this Nebraska defense was giving Illinois space. They were playing back in coverage. They were playing some zone. Yeah, Tommy Hill was out. So what? Like, you have the depth. There's like 25 defensive backs on scholarship. You brought a guy in from the NFL, from the Buffalo Bills, to coach this team. You have Tony White back. He's, by all accounts, ready to be a head coach. Like everything's there. All the experience, all the physicality, all the size, all the supposed NFL talent is there with this defense. And they got gouged by Illinois. Like, look at the overtime. I mean, 21 yards on the first play. There were men running open in the end zone every time Luke Altmaier wanted to throw a touchdown pass. He did it.
So, I mean, you know, you go back to specifically like goal line stuff for Illinois. You know, it was they scored on the same play at least 2 times. It was possibly 3 times. I mean, it was basically they're slipping a tight end out there. The one time
or a 335-pound offensive lineman.
They slipped the number 94 or whatever out there. I mean, just like it's kind of like I don't know how you lose that. And you know, you look at overtime and the first play of overtime, and you kind of watch it from up top, and Nebraska is like, Illinois has a numbers advantage where they are running the ball. I don't know if this is a misalignment thing or what the deal is here. But I just think like maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is. I'll have to go back and probably watch it again. I haven't watched the game, you know, a second time yet, but I just feel like maybe Nebraska needs to sort of get back to the basics a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, or maybe they find that they're not good enough and they need to, you know, bring more. So quickly, you were talking about not getting off the field. I came up with this last night. So this is outside of the 2 fumble drives. Obviously the John Bullock great punch out, and then the Sierra Wright strip sack, which was a huge play in the game.
Huge plays.
So here's Illinois' other drives in the game: 6 plays, 78 yards, touchdown; 8 plays, 62 yards, field goal; 9 plays, 50 yards, turnover on downs; 9 plays, 37 yards, punt; 11 plays, 57 yards, touchdown; 9 plays, 75 yards, touchdown; 8 plays, 31 yards, punt. And then there was the 2-play drive in overtime. That's 8.5 plays per drive when you take out that overtime drive, the 2 fumble drives, and then of course the kneel down drive, which I didn't count in the first, the kneel down in the first half drive, but I didn't count in the first place. I mean, they couldn't get off the field. And this is now 2 weeks running. So it's a really disturbing trend for where we thought this defense would be.
That's why they wore down. I don't know. I'm not ready to buy into Bielema's belief that Illinois is better conditioned and that Illinois is bigger and stronger and that Illinois had a physical advantage at the line of scrimmage against Nebraska. And maybe he wasn't even saying that. Maybe what he was saying is that he liked the way things were going, the progression of the game for Illinois, when even when Illinois wasn't scoring, they were 8-9 play drives. And at some point, Nebraska, without getting any 3-and-outs, no traditional 3-and-outs. There was the one turnover that was a 2-play drive. Great. But there was nothing where it's just, oh, they got 3 plays, 4 yards, time to punt. The punts all came after first downs. Like that wears on a defense physically and mentally. I can understand that. But last thing that I'll say about the defense before we move on to overtime or the 3rd and 3 play, wherever we want to go next. I think they need to get back to what they are. This is a defense that Tony White came in and built at Nebraska to create chaos. And I think what they're trying to do this year, and we saw it early in the season, we talked about the ability for Nebraska to get to the pass rush, to get to the quarterback without sending extra players on the pass rush. Like they want to do it with a 3-man rush. Great. Like that's the NFL mentality. You don't want to give up anything on the back end. You want to be able to get home. And they spent a lot of the offseason working on that. And I think that's Matt Rhule's base philosophy about defense. I'm not sure that it jives with Tony White's base philosophy about defense, which is to create havoc, to create chaos so that the offense doesn't know what angle you're coming from, who's coming from where. Players are flying around. We saw it a little bit in the Colorado game, but I don't think they're on the same page about what they want to do with the defense. And they have to get back to what Tony wants to do, which is to confuse the offense. Like they have the players to be able to do that, and I don't think they're doing it enough.
Man, I think you're totally right. Maybe they thought they could lean on their talent and size and whatever. But now you get into conference play, you just can't do that anymore. So you know what? Let's do this because we're gonna spend a minute on overtime. We're gonna spend a few minutes on the offense, obviously, as well. But right before we started recording, Mitch, I asked people just a quick straw poll on our Twitter account at LockedOnNEB. Just quick hitters. Let's get some things that we should talk about here. So let's ride through a couple of these for 5 minutes, and then we'll get into some other stuff. Brandon, he wants to talk about penalties. Okay. The backup kicker on 4th and 3, White getting out schemed, and the mental collapse in overtime. Who wants to hit on all of these things?
Okay. Penalties.
Yeah, penalties, man.
4 15-yarders against the defense. All came on scoring drives for Illinois. 17 of Illinois' points came on those drives. There was another penalty that wasn't called where Nebraska got off the field defensively on a 4th down stop against Altmaier, and there was a face mask that went uncalled. So here's what I'll say about penalties. They were undisciplined, 2 face masks, a hands to the face. I forget what the 4th one was, but you can't do that stuff. They were legit. They were happening. There were some calls in this game that went against Nebraska. There were some calls in this game that went for Nebraska. The one that people wanted in overtime on Jamal Banks on the sideline on the 3rd down and forever where he flopped a little bit. Good, smart play by Banks to go to the ground and try to get that flag. It's your best chance to extend it and get an automatic first down. People would have gone crazy on the Nebraska side if that happened to Nebraska and the flag came out. So I don't want to hear about how it should have come out for Illinois.
There was an almost one. I mean, when Illinois' last drive of regulation, 3rd down, Altmaier's rolling out. Jamari Butler extends a little bit, trying to push him out of bounds and, put pressure on him. Like, that was a scary sort of moment. So neither of those get called. Yeah. And I'm absolutely fine with that. I just can we go back to MJ Sherman's, punch?
Right. That was the other one. Unnecessary roughness.
So first
on
of
the
all,
4th down play.
So the question is, what did it, if because it's a 4th and 1,
they picked it up.
The spot is horrible.
It was a bad spot.
We can talk about officiating. The spot was horrible. So what should have happened is it should have been Nebraska's ball with a 15-yard penalty going back the other way, but it wasn't, and it gave Illinois even a better opportunity to score just a couple plays later. It's a stupid play. It's after the whistle. I can't I don't really understand it that much. Maybe he didn't hear the whistle, but that's an old guy who's been around for a long time and a guy that they trust in this defense who's made a couple of those just really bad headspace plays this year.
I saw some complaints saying that he was trying to get the ball out. The running back was on the ground. He was laying on the ground.
Yeah.
No.
I don't buy it either. Let's go to let's see. Dark Husker, O-line play and how it always gets a free pass.
Well, it doesn't in overtime. The O-line lost the game in overtime. Dylan didn't have time to throw, started with a false start on Gunnar Gatula, who played almost the whole game after Turner Corcoran went out. Sounds like that's maybe serious with Corcoran, so you may be looking at your new left tackle, and Gunnar Gatula would be number 3 for the season. Season started, we thought it was going to be Teddy Prohaska. Then it was Turner Corcoran for 3 games. Maybe it's Gunnar Gatula now. Certainly, it seems like it's going to be that way, at least for the short term. We'll get word Monday about what is going on with Turner Corcoran, but he didn't come back in. O-line was a mess in overtime. Yeah, Illinois was sending pressure. They decided to heat up Dylan Raiola and see what would happen at points in the game. He made some plays when they blitzed. He did not in overtime, and that's partly on the O-line. I mean, backs have to be in there to pick up the pass protection, but it collapsed. Everything collapsed in overtime.
Yeah, I wonder if going forward they see an option with Mazuka at tackle. I don't know. I don't know, because it looked like he was maybe getting ready to go in and doing some tackle kick steps there late in the game. I don't know. But they are in real trouble at that position if Corcoran's going to be out for any period of time. No free passes in this one, that's for sure. Nope. However, you do get bailed out by great quarterback play sometimes, and that was the obvious glaring bright spot for Nebraska in this game. The quarterback is freaking awesome. He's very good.
Well, the other thing about the O-line, Nebraska ran for 1 yard in the 4th quarter. I'm not even counting overtime when it was like negative 38. Yeah. They ran for 1 yard in the 4th quarter. Matt Rhule wants to run for 75 yards in the 4th quarter. Illinois did that. Illinois ran for 79 yards in the 4th quarter. Nebraska ran for 1. That's on the O-line.
One more before we take a quick break here. It was Brandon's other question. 4th and 3, you have any problem with kicking the field goal?
Yeah, a little bit. This goes back to the 3rd and 3 play. I think at that point from the 21-yard line with a backup kicker who's never hit anything more than an extra point. I know he made a field goal in the first half, but that was an extra point. I think it's 4-down territory. I think you run the ball on 3rd and 3, or you throw something that you know you're going to be able to complete. Rhule said the number one progression, the number one route in that progression was to the fullback in the flat, and he was covered up. Barrett Liebentritt went out, and Illinois, a linebacker, picked him up. You had Borkerture. There was a receiver there too. So he went to his 4th read, which is crazy because Dylan was getting pressured on that play off the edge. The player that should have been or would have been blocked by Luke Lindenmeyer, he had a free path to the quarterback and made Dylan rush the throw. So he's kind of throwing off his back foot, which I think he needs to do a better job of stepping into those throws when pressure's coming. That's when he tends to overthrow people, but he's, extremely accurate in all situations. And he just led Lindenmeyer a little too far. Look, Luke Lindenmeyer's caught one pass in his career. Barrett Liebentritt is not a pass catcher. I think if you're going to throw the ball on 3rd and 3 there, which to me is a bigger issue than kicking it on 4th and 3, throw it to somebody who has experience catching the ball. Raiola and Luke Lindenmeyer, for as good of a player as Lindenmeyer is, they're not in sync the same way that he is with Nair or Fedoni or Banks. Like go to one of your proven targets in that crucial spot. Kicking it on 4th and 3, I think the chances of making that field goal are less than 50%, and which is sad. And you probably just need to go for it and give yourself 2 downs to pick it up.
The stats would just about back that up at this point. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going fast here. We got a lot of stuff to cover on the other side here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
Let me hit this thing here. Sorry, I wasn't ready for that. Here we go.
All right, it's Apper. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, which is, of course, America's #1 sports book. Now through tomorrow, if you're listening to this on Saturday, now through September 22nd, Sunday, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Once again, that's a pretty sweet deal. Love watching the NFL on Sundays. Can't wait to do so tomorrow. Head to FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook today.
And I am here to tell you about Game Time. College football season is here. The pennant races are winding down in Major League Baseball. It is time to get excited about fall sports. And if you would like to see a game in person, maybe it's a baseball game, maybe it's a football game, Game Time will make that experience much easier. It is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the app go down the closer you get to first pitch. So whatever it is, if it's a concert, if it's a baseball game, a football game, maybe it's basketball season coming up, if it's a hot ticket, it's there on Game Time. I love that you can see flash deals. You can see views from your seat. You can customize your spot in the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. Nebraska loses on a Friday night, 400th consecutive sellout to Illinois, 31-24 in overtime. 0-1 in the conference. Now they'll try and pick things back up in a probably sleepy environment against Purdue next week. Overtime, quickly. Nebraska hasn't gotten a first down in overtime in almost 10 years. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's over multiple coaching staffs. It's over different types of talent. It's against different types of teams. Nebraska lets Illinois score on 2 plays very easily in overtime, and then offensively goes backwards to the point where you now have the screenshot that lives forever that says it was 3rd and 46 in overtime in Nebraska's territory. And it is an abject disaster in overtime. Now, maybe you shouldn't have been in there in the first place, but my goodness, I don't even know what to do with this information, Mitch.
You know about the curse? Remember the curse of Frank Solich that he lifted last year.
Yeah.
And this was related to the unjust firing, in the opinion of some people, of Frank Solich, how Nebraska then was set to live in forever live in irrelevance. What's happening in overtime is the curse of Bo Pelini. The last overtime win for Nebraska in 2014 at Iowa was Bo's last game. They fired him the weekend after Black Friday in 2014.
Last
John
time they scored a point,
did.
last time they got a first down, that was Bo's last game.
It feels like it's the last time they got a yard in overtime, although I did see the handy chart that said there was actually an overtime where Nebraska gained 9 yards. Amazing. It's not just that they can't get a first down. The defense, and like 3 of the last 4 before Friday night ended with interceptions, but they can't stop anyone in overtime. They don't. Illinois, that's how it goes in overtime for Nebraska. First down and 10 from the 25, rush for 21 yards. First down and goal from the 4-yard touchdown pass. Like, oh, that's a normal overtime for Nebraska. You know, you win the coin toss in overtime. It's like, okay, maybe this is the time. They got Dylan Raiola. It's the 400th sellout. Are they going to exercise all the demons at once, beat a ranked team for the first time in 25 games? Are they going to win an overtime game for the first time in a decade and do it on the same night? What a story that would be. No. And then the Huskers get the ball and it's just a backwards retreat. I don't know. That's in their heads. They know.
And that's,
we saw it at Wisconsin last year. It's in their heads.
That's a big thing. I mean, that is clearly something that we thought was, going away or gone, and they were going to be able to sort of erase that with their hard work and whatever it has been over the offseason. But I mean, Nebraska got into these tight moments late in the game and they did not respond well. And so there you have your answer. Like this is still a thing. It is still at the forefront of what Nebraska is trying to fix here and trying to get right. We wondered about it because Nebraska hadn't had a close game going into last night against Illinois. And then they got into one, and with a team that's, similar, it's similar to them at the very least, or maybe they're even better than. We all thought that before the game. And Nebraska, I mean, once again, 3rd and 46 in overtime. Like, there's no explanation for that. And even on the last drive, I guess it was Nebraska's second to last drive of regulation, the freshman quarterback, who has been outstanding, inexplicably drops the ball multiple times. I mean, and goes backwards. I can't I don't know what that is outside of something that is just baked into the DNA of the program from a mentality standpoint.
I want to say one thing quick about that, and then we'll maybe get to special teams. So the thing with Dylan on that drive, I felt there was a moment in this game where it seemed like the offenses were just kind of trading punches, although Nebraska scored just 7 points after halftime, so that wasn't really the case. But it seemed like maybe whoever has the ball last is going to win this game, and it was somewhat offensive dominated, which again is weird to say when the Huskers scored just once after halftime. But that's how it felt to me, maybe middle, early fourth quarter. And I said, someone's going to make a big defensive play to win this game. I feel like it's going to be decided in that way. And then the next drive, Dylan gets sacked. He fumbles. It looks like it's about to happen. Nebraska dodges a bullet. The Huskers recover the fumble, not once, but twice. They punt it away. And you're like, well, okay, is there going to be a big defensive play? And then soon thereafter comes the strip sack from Sierra Wright, and Huskers are on the ball and they've got it and they can march down with 8 minutes left for the winning score. And I thought, all right, well, hey, maybe Nebraska just made the big defensive play. No, the reality was they didn't. They get stopped as we've gone through. I think in those final minutes, the moment got a little big for Dylan, and he did hit some passes on the last drive, but maybe it's more so Nebraska fell into a situation where it relied too much on him. We wondered if that was possible because he's so capable, because he can seemingly do everything. But remember, this is his first Big Ten game. This is his 4th game as a college quarterback. Those 2 fumbles, and then the way that he managed overtime, he was getting lit up. I get it. They were bringing the heat at him, but the intentional grounding, like, he's got to get rid of that ball so they're not in 3rd and 40 something before the pass rush gets to him. I think for the first time in his career, and he's going to learn from it, things got going a little fast for him in the fourth quarter in OT.
Nebraska's running backs ran it 24 times for 89 yards. He didn't have any help. And Nebraska couldn't depend on the run game. They didn't have the option to, and so they didn't. In total, the team ran it for 48 yards, but that was 52 yards and sacks from Dylan. But I mean, it's a dangerous game, right? It's a dangerous game you're playing. Let me say this about Dylan before we move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. He was amazing. I mean, he was fantastic. Some of the throws that he was making in this game were absurd. I mean, you got Nair in the short corner of the end zone. That's just great, communication and kind of like being on the same page with the wide receiver there. Some layered throws where you got crossers at different depths of the field. Like, he can do all of those things, but Nebraska has to nip this in the bud right now. You cannot go too far down the road of leaning on him too much. It's a scary thought for him, and it's a scary thought for the program.
Yeah. I won't go any farther on that of what could happen if they lean on him too much. I will say, last thing about Dylan, there was a throw early in the third quarter, and this is when I thought Nebraska definitely was going to win the game. Huskers come out, they did get a stop, first drive of the second half, and take over possession deep in their own territory. First play, Dylan rolls out to his right, and he throws a ball, as you said, a layered throw over the second level of the defense. And it was Nair who was running in front of a safety behind a linebacker. And everybody on my side of the press box kind of gasped when he threw it, because it looked like he was throwing it right at the linebacker.
Yeah.
But no, it had the loft on it to go well over the linebacker and drop right in to Isaiah Nair. And it was a big gain out near midfield. And I felt like at that time, okay, Nebraska's going to go down and score here and be up 24-10. And at that point, I think the defense will get into its element, and this is going to be a celebratory night at Memorial Stadium. Of course, that didn't happen, but that throw right there illustrates what he can do, and that's a throw no Nebraska quarterback has made in a long, long time. Like maybe Zach Taylor. I don't even know if he had the arm strength to do that. Right. I think he had the smarts, but Nebraska quarterbacks have not been able to make that throw.
Special teams, Nebraska. It's pretty point blank. They cannot kick field goals, and Alvano was out of the game. They entrusted John Hull to kick the short one with the game on the line, and the laces were in on the hold by Brian Buschini, who also made another mistake on the night he made a couple mistakes and outpunting his coverage a couple times. Illinois
across the field
got busy in the return game. They had 59 yards worth of kick return yards. They had 60 yards worth of punt return yards. I mean, it's all the stuff that had cropped up in the first couple of games of the season that we thought, oh man, this is going to hurt them at some point. It did hurt them. Maybe it's all hidden yardage, but it's not when obviously your kicker is missing a field goal with the game on the line, and they're getting big punts on a punt return to put them in good field position. It's just, pretty much all of it at this point. They can't kick it, through the end zone routinely on a kickoff. It's a dangerous game they're playing right there.
It's disaster. Like, special teams shouldn't be like this. Like, it's a huge part of the game in the Big Ten, and arguably, maybe inarguably, it lost them the game on Friday night, special teams. Nebraska plays an average game on special teams. I think it probably wins. Take all the other stuff out of it, the penalties, the leaky defense, average game on special teams. It doesn't go to overtime. Nebraska wins the football game. Something has to be done. And Matt Rhule has some flexibility to do some things with special teams that he wouldn't have had a year ago or ever in his career, or no Nebraska coach would have ever had. Ed Foley needs some help. Like, Rhule believes in Ed Foley. He's been with him since they were at Temple. Okay, get him some help. You got Josh Martin over there, who was the tight ends coach a year ago and is helping coach special teams. Like, rearrange some responsibilities. Bring someone else in from the outside who can help Ed Foley get this thing figured out. Maybe Ed can help do some things elsewhere. He's coached offensive line. That needs some help. Like, it is to the point now with special teams where they have to look at what they're doing, everything on the field, off the field, in coaching, and figure out what they can do different to make it work, because it's that bad 4 games into the season. It requires an adjustment. I say now, not 8 games from now.
Yeah, it can't. I mean, Nebraska's you got to win. You got to win now. They're still in win now mode, and there's still a lot of season left in front of you. But you got to fix some things at this very moment. So we'll see. They'll go back to the drawing board and roll it out there against Purdue. And like I said, the schedule. If Illinois is coming in on a Friday night with a good environment and beating you, like nothing's off the table, right? So you gotta fix some things.
Don't think the bowl game's a lock.
No, oh God. All right, Mitch. That was the fast version of everything. I can't wait to talk about it with you more this week and what you've written after the game and what our shows will have all week. So please join us for those things. But it's been a good reaction pod. Appreciate you guys on a Saturday morning. Enjoy the day of college football today. Enjoy the day of the NFL over the weekend. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you in the Locked On Nebraska podcast. We'll talk to you on Monday.